What is going on, guys and gals? Brooklyn bound the Raid Scientist here, and today I'm going to go over my list of all the seasonal legendary weapons that you absolutely must farm, and even work to get the crafted version before Lightfall drops on February 28th of 2023. This collection of weapons is likely getting vaulted with the Lightfall release, and these weapons are some of the best from this year that you definitely are going to want going into the next year. I'll go through the perk combos I'm out looking for and why they're so highly recommended. The Year of the Witch Queen brought us a ton of fun, powerful, and unique weapons and perk combinations, and while there are some weapons that didn't make the list, I feel this list is the best bang for your buck depending on how many of the seasonal weapons you already have and how much time you have to grind before Lightfall. If you liked the video and find it helpful, please drop a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I would love to push for 10,000 subscribers this year, and we can't do it without your support. Alright, let's get into the weapons. I'm going to go through each season from this year so we can cover the best ways to get each weapon and how to get those patterns the fastest as well. First up from Season of the Risen is the Solar Wave Frame Grenade Launcher Explosive Personality. Wave Frame Grenade Launchers are absolute beasts in PvE as utility weapons. Explosive Personality is the only solar wave frame in the game, and that aside, it has some amazing perk options that set it aside from others. In the third column, it can roll with auto-loading holster, stats for all, and feeding frenzy, and all three of these options are great. Feeding frenzy will dramatically boost your reloads, and stats for all can grant range, stability, and handling, and reload speed if you hit 3 targets, which wave frames can do very easily in crowded activities. In the fourth column, you almost can't get a bad perk, to be honest, with One for All and Frenzy at the top of my list. I think Unrelenting can be very viable too for the bonus healing if you're running solo content or Nightfalls or other endgames, but it's up to you. And finally, but not definitely overlooked, is that this weapon comes with the Season of the Risen Origin perk called Land Tank, which will increase your resilience and damage resistance against all combatants after a kill and lasts for 5 seconds and can stack up to 3 times. To obtain this weapon, you'll want to interact with the war table in the helm and unlock upgrades at the war table and run psyops of playlist activities. For crafting, you're going to need red frames of this weapon, and you can guarantee at least 1 a week if you upgrade the Deep Sight Requisition perk at the war table, which will give you a guaranteed deep sight when you decrypt 1 each per week. Now, also from the Season of the Risen is the 540 RPM Pulse Rifle Peace of Mind. While Pulse Rifles are pretty meh in PvE content right now, they are absolutely running rampant in PvP due to the damage they can burst out at long ranges. If you typically play with Scouts or Pulses in the Crucible, the Peace of Mind should definitely be on your list to acquire before it goes away in February. In column 3, Perpetual Motion is what you're likely looking for, which improves your stability, handling, and reload while you're moving, and you can pair this very nicely with either Moving Target in the 4th column or Adrenaline Junkie. Furthermore, once again, as with Explosive Personality, this also has the Origin trait Land Tank, which again gives you increased resilience and damage resistance. Once again, to obtain this weapon, you're going to want to interact with the war table, unlock the upgrades for the Deep Sight Resonance, and run the PsyOps playlist activity. Alright, moving on to Season of the Haunted are 2 PvE monster weapons that I have literally been using a ton in the endgame content to this day, and I can see them being a big part of Lightfall. Both of these weapons are acquired on the Castellum and the Leviathan, with either running Nightmare Containment activities or opening opulent chests. You can upgrade the Crown of Sorrow vendor in the helm to increase your chances at red frame versions of both opulent and haunted weapons. First up is the Bump in the Night rocket launcher. This is an aggressive frame, stasis rocket launcher that can shell out top tier damage against bosses that can even compete with linear fusion rifles. In column 3, auto-loading holster is typically my go-to perk choice. This allows you to fire, swap to a special, toss grenades or an ability, and then switch back to the rocket again without having to reload. However, if you're running any type of grenade build, like fusion grenades on a warlock or maybe even storm grenades on an arc subclass, then Demolitionist is an insane 3rd column perk option. This will auto-reload your rocket after dealing grenade damage, which can allow for some crazy DPS numbers with swapping between grenade damage, rocket damage, special damage, and so on. In the fourth column, Chill Clip is the S tier perk, which sets this rocket apart from others. You can apply slow to enemies, and it does freeze and then shatter damage on top of the impact damage if you have someone on your team using Gjallarhorn. If you primarily run solo, then you may consider Vorpal Weapon or Chain Reaction. Because this is an aggressive frame rocket, it intrinsically is doing more damage than something like a Palmyra. Speaking of intrinsic, don't forget that this rocket launcher also has a seasonal origin perk called Extrovert, which will grant health restoration when getting kills when surrounded, which can prove helpful in a pinch when trying to use your heavy to clear out a big area of ads. Also from the Season of the Haunted is the Callus Mini Tool. This is one of the opulent weapons that was reprised this season and introduced with a new perk with Solar 3.0 called Incandescent. This makes Callus Mini Tool one of the most used primary weapons in the entire game to date. This 900 RPM Solar SMG is probably my most used weapon this year myself. Because this weapon wasn't one of the true seasonal weapons from Haunted, you may need to do a little bit more work to acquire it. You can open opulent chests found around the Leviathan using opulent keys. Once you've unlocked this weapon once, you can also focus it at the helm with special upgrades from the Crown of Sorrow. For barrels and mags, I'm always on the lookout for more stability or more range when it comes to SMGs, so things like small bore, hammerforge, or polygonal with accurized rounds for plus 10 range are great. For perks in column 3, Moving Target is my personal choice, but Threat Detector is pretty viable since you'll be using this a lot with enemies nearby, and even Unrelenting for the healing by defeating multiple enemies. Pairing any of these 3 perks with the new solar perk Incandescent is definitely the play here. Incandescent spreads Scorch across targets, causing them to burn, and if you're using a solar subclass, you can even improve your Scorch effectiveness through your fragments and your aspects. This turns it into a great tool to spread damage over time Scorch Burn to all enemies as you clear them out. Moving on, the next weapon comes from Season 18, Season of the Plunder. This is the 200 RPM Arc Scout Rifle, Tarnished Metal. This was introduced among the new Arc 3.0 weapon perks, which included a new one called Volt Shot. Volt Shot can roll in the 4th column on the Scout, which grants you a 7-second buff when reloading after a kill to spread Jolt to nearby enemies. This is essentially the Arc version of Incandescent, where it will chain Jolt to nearby enemies. Because activating Volt Shot requires reloading, I highly recommend Rapid Hit as your 3rd column perk, as it will increase the stability and reload speed when getting consistent crit shots. Moving Target and Demolition are other great perks in the 3rd column, especially if you're using something like Explosive Payload or Dragonfly in the 4th column instead of Volt Shot. These perk combinations make Tarnished Metal a great weapon for PvE content due to the lethality you can instill from Scout Rifle ranges. Scout Rifles often dominate things like Grandmaster Nightfalls due to the need for champion perks that are linked to Scout Rifles and the range you need to do to kill enemies. This is by far my favorite current Scout Rifle in the game. This weapon comes from running Season of the Plunder activities such as Catch Crash and Expeditions. As you upgrade the star chart, you can focus specific seasonal weapons, increase your chance at making them red frame, and also make it so you can get a special treasure map that guarantees a weapon at the end of Expeditions. Okay, now, 2 weapons left on our list, both coming from the current season, Season of the Seraph. First up is the Ikelos SMG version 3. This reprised Ikelos weapon returns with a massive set of perks available to make this arguably the best primary weapon currently in the game. Unlocking these Ikelos weapons comes from finding the resonance stems scattered across the solar system. Each of these will guarantee you one of the 4 reprised Ikelos weapons, and once you acquire the SMG, you'll unlock the ability to focus it at the exo frame in the helm. Furthermore, if you unlock the Focusing Deep Sight on the exo frame, you can guarantee a red border once each week through Umbral Engram Decryption. What makes this version of the Ikelos SMG so special is that it can roll with 2 perks that are very synergistic: Feeding Frenzy and Volt Shot. For PvE, these are definitely the best 2 options. Feeding Frenzy speeds your reloads very quickly depending on the number of rapid kills before reloading, and Volt Shot, which recall chains jolted arc damage across enemies, requires you to reload first to activate it before it lasts for 7 seconds. I would highly recommend grinding out 5 red frames for this one. As usual, for barrels and mags, I would recommend choices that increase your range and stability first and foremost. Small bore and accurized rounds give you about plus 17 to range and plus 7 to stability without sacrificing other stats. Now, while Feeding Frenzy Volt Shot is probably the most sought after, there are some other good options as well. Perpetual Motion or Dynamic Sway Reduction in Column 3, paired with Frenzy, and maybe even Pugilist if you run a melee type of build. To add the icing on the cake for this now 3rd version of the Ikelos SMG is that it now has an origin trait that can prove very handy. Rasputin's Arsenal will partially reload the mag anytime you break an enemy shield. And while this obviously isn't a game-breaking perk, it's just one more reason why this weapon is going to be an absolute beast in PvE for a while to come. And finally, the last weapon in my list of ones to grind before Lightfall is the new Void Heavy Machine Gun Retrofit Escapade. This 900 RPM heavy machine gun is achieved through running Season of the Seraph Heist Battlegrounds, and you can once again improve your odds at getting red frame versions for crafting by unlocking the upgrades at the Exo frame and focusing this weapon specifically. Now, I will mention that at currently the date of making this video, there is an insane pairing with this weapon and the hunters wearing the Gear Falcon's chest piece, which causes the volatile rounds to consistently proc and absolutely decimate enemies and bosses. We don't quite know how long this will work, but there is a strong possibility this wasn't intended and may get patched in a future update. Regardless, however, even without this, the weapon I would still highly recommend farming for. While 900 RPM HMGs are usually nowhere on my list of weapons to use, this one provides some pretty good benefits that other HMGs don't, and even some of the exotics. It can do very, very good damage with minimal reloading based on perk options, and what class you're on. Hunters can dodge reload, and Titans can use an Actium War Rig exotic chest piece to not have to reload either. Secondly, there are 2 main perks which help this weapon shine above others. 4th times a charm in the 3rd column and target lock in the 4th column. 4th times a charm will constantly keep adding bullets into the mag as you maintain hitting crit spots, which is pretty easy on some bosses and almost brainless with the Divinity Bubble. And target lock is the new perk that will increase the weapon's damage more as you maintain shots on your target. It can stack up to 5 times as you keep firing, thus increasing your damage output drastically. These 2 perk combinations are pretty much the ideal options if you're going to use this weapon for anything like boss damage or endgame content. If you plan to use this more for standard content, clearing enemies and majors, then perks like Feeding Frenzy for a faster reload and Frenzy or Rampage in the final column will do. Either way, get yourself a good roll on Retrofit Escapade before it goes away. Alright, that's the list. Best of luck out there farming and getting ready for Lightfall, Guardians, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.